This is part 1 of a 2-part episode. If you'd like to get the whole episode, please go to patreon.com/MHBC and sign up, giving us a little bit of your money, and it means you'll get the whole episode in one go.
Part 2 of this episode will be available on Wednesday, but Patreon allows you to get the entire episode right now. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe on your podcatcher to ensure that you never miss an episode of the Mental Health Book Club podcast. Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Book Club podcast with your hosts Sydney Timmins and Becky Lawrence. We would like to take this opportunity to let you know that we will be covering a diverse range of mental health topics that may be distressing to some listeners. You can find a full list of the topics being covered in each episode in the show notes. Please check the show notes before listening to any of our episodes. Welcome to the Mental Health Book Club podcast with Sydney Timmins and
Becky Lawrence.
And today we are reading Love and Remission, My Life, My Man, My Cancer by Annie Belasco.
On Amazon, this book gets 5 stars from 10 reviews. From Goodreads, 5 stars from 4 ratings. Sydney gave this 5 stars and I gave it 5 stars.
This was a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Although the subject matter is difficult because it is Annie's journey with breast cancer, being diagnosed at the age of 25, the way she writes this book blew me away, really.
Yeah, I really liked it. And I actually tweeted her and was like, it's like Bridget Jones meets cancer. And
yeah, I can see that.
And at first, I wasn't sure I was going to like the character, and we'll talk about why and stuff.
Character who is actually Annie.
Yeah. And at first, I wasn't even sure it was her story because
she uses her full name to begin with, so she refers to herself as Annabelle, and she uses her maiden name in there as well. So
and it really confused me because I was like, it's almost like the author's name is like a spoiler alert. Because obviously at the beginning, she's looking for a relationship and things like that. So shall I read you the blurb?
I think so.
In her mid-20s, balancing a stable job and a partying lifestyle, Annie is also on the hunt for a man. She wanted to find Mr. Right, get married, buy a house and live the life she's always wanted. But then one day she found a lump, breast cancer. The 2 words that would derail Annie's life. Suddenly she realises how short her life had been, and the very idea of finding love seems impossible. As her hair falls out and her social life crumbled, her mental health deteriorated, she began to question if she would actually survive. Struggling with an identity crisis and worrying low moods, she wondered if she'd ever be able to live the normal life that had been within her reach only months earlier. Love and Remission tells the tale of a young woman in search of love and mental well-being. Okay, so if we start off by talking about her diagnosis with cancer. So she finds a lump and within a few days, I think it's like 9 days, she sees the GP. They immediately send her for a biopsy. Everyone's very much, it's probably not, it's probably this, it's probably nothing because she's so young.
Yeah, so she's only 25. And we decided to look into some statistics surrounding breast cancer diagnosis and at what age typically women are usually diagnosed. So we found out that,
well, so regular breast screening is offered to anyone between 50 and 70. And in some areas, that's now been stretched to 47 to 73 on a trial basis. But out of those 50 to 70-year-olds, 48% of people end up with a diagnosis. So we looked into, well, what about people younger? So it is considered, if you're younger than 50, you are at low risk and you aren't invited for a mammogram, mainly because it's difficult to see because you have more dense tissue in the breast. And there's limited research done to see whether mammograms in a younger age would actually prevent.
Mm-hmm.
So the NHS Choices quoted some Cancer Research UK statistics, which said that in 2010, more than 10,000 people were diagnosed under 50.
So that is a significant jump between the years beforehand. I think that in 2010, it was the first time that the number of diagnoses was above 10,000 people.
Since 1995, it had 11% increase. And they're saying that 1 in 5 breast cancer diagnoses are under 50.
Which is an interesting statistic. So it's approximately 20% of people under the age of 50 are being diagnosed with breast cancer. And when you're basically being told that don't worry about it, you're at low risk, 20% is quite significant.
It is.
It's more significant than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, much higher than I thought.
And I don't know, I don't think it's necessarily routinely put out there to younger women. I have to admit, I went recently because women, we get all these fun things. I went for a smear test, and the questions that I asked were, do you regularly check your breasts? And I was like, yeah, but I don't understand why you are asking. And now I know that the reason why she was asking, because there's this huge increase. Yeah, it is an incredible statistic.
So a third of women who are diagnosed with cancer are diagnosed with breast cancer.
Which again is, I don't know, it's surprising. It's not one of those things I would have routinely associated with.
Yeah, and although there is much better treatment and there's more success, it has a 78% survival rate for 10 years or more. Which,
post-diagnosis.
Yeah, which is really good. In 2016, though, the deaths were at about 11,563, which if you put to how many were diagnosed sort of the year before, which were the only statistics we found, which were 55,122, means that about a fifth
of people are still dying from this cancer. Mm.
Yeah.
So in reality, Annie was extremely lucky that she noticed the fact that there was a lump, that she then went and got it checked. And
even though when she's diagnosed, she's already stage 3.
Which is significant. So again, we also looked up what the stages were for breast cancer, because when you come to diagnosing cancer, there are 4 different stages. There's stage 1, 2, 3, 4. There's also stage 0, I believe.
Yeah.
And from that, you can then have additional things added to the diagnosis with the stages. So we've got a little bit of information about that.
So on the Macmillan website, which is a great resource for anything to do with cancer, it says that stage 1 is where breast cancer is often called an early breast cancer. And it's where a lump is 2 centimetres or smaller and hasn't spread to the lymph nodes or into the armpit. Whereas stage 2, which is divided into 2 stages, is where it might be smaller than 2 centimetres, but it has spread to some lymph nodes in the armpit, or it's bigger than 2 centimetres but hasn't spread. Whereas a 2B diagnosis is where it is smaller than 5 centimetres, so this is obviously getting that little bit larger, but not spread to the armpit, or it is bigger than 5 centimetres but not spread to the lymph nodes. Whereas when you get to stage 3, which is divided into 3 sections, it is getting more serious. So it's where the lymph nodes are now being involved.
So basically what happens when the cancer gets into the lymph nodes, that is when the cancer can spread throughout the body. So there are typical locations that breast cancer will end up if it is in the lymph nodes. So it's really important for when they find out and they've checked the lymph nodes is to get rid of those lymph nodes as quick as possible to prevent the risk of the cancer spreading to any other part of the body.
And actually, in the book, I was really surprised because Annie talks about this.
How many lymph nodes are in the breast? I was like, how many?
50.
Yeah, and she had how many?
47.
Ridiculous amounts, wasn't it?
47 out of 50, which she then went, that sounds really serious.
Just a little. Yeah, just a little.
So she's counted as stage 3C, which is the highest, where the cancer has spread to 10 or more lymph nodes in the armpit or below the breastbone and near the collarbone. Whereas stage 4, which is the one up, is where breast cancer has spread to other parts of the body, which includes your bones, your blood, your liver, your lungs.
Brain.
Yeah. So it's when it spreads even further. And usually at that point, that's when it becomes much, much harder to treat.
Thankfully for Annie, it was just in the lymph nodes. It hadn't gone any further. So the course of action was for them to remove the lump, including the breast itself, then to have a period of chemotherapy and radiotherapy to try and ensure that it was completely out of her body.
Yeah, because when surgeons go in to cut out cancer, the cells are so tiny, they can't necessarily get everything. So although they might say that they looks like they got clean lines, they looks like they've taken everything they can, actually there might be tiny cells that are still there that are, or even just developing. And so the chemotherapy goes in and the radiotherapy goes in and tries to get rid of those cells, and basically kind of gets rid of any new or developing cells in that area and all over
the entire body. So if you have rapidly dividing cells, which include your hair cells, so the cells that produce your hair are identified as rapidly dividing cells, and which is why you end up with the side effect of losing your hair. And we see that for Annie. She loses the hair that she has so beautifully maintained, and it really is that sign, isn't it, of womanhood, is your hair. It's one of those things that if you take that away, how do you then define yourself? And I think also in the book you see that Annie does go through this process of what about my gorgeous Jordan long locks and my hair extensions and all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, and she, first of all, when she's diagnosed, goes to the hairdressers and says, right, take out the extensions, let's have it cut off short. If it's going to lose it, rather than lose all of the hair, let's cut it off short. And then when it does start coming out, she's actually interviewing a candidate because she's actually gone back to work, which I think is so impressive. I can't believe she goes to work, but she does. And she's interviewing someone and she sort of puts her hand in her hair and comes out with a clump of it and realises it's pretty much everywhere.
But it's also a significant sign that there's something wrong, isn't it? When you lose your hair and you are then having to wear a wig or a headscarf, not that you have to, this is your personal choice, you can do it or not. But it is a sign that there's something wrong, and it's a visible sign that you put out there to the world, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people find. It's not only changing your identity in some way, because our hair is so important to us, it's also making you kind of a beacon to you, saying, I've got cancer, I'm sick.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that Annie finds really difficult, because one of the reasons she goes back to work is she tries to carry on as normal. She tries to keep her life as normal as it was.
Yeah, and after, it's not in any way similar whatsoever, but after I was diagnosed with MS, again, instead of just going home and wallowing in it, I ensured that I went back to work. I needed to be busy. I needed to keep going. Otherwise, if I'd stopped, I don't think I would have got back up again.
Yeah, especially as there's a shock after you hear these diagnoses that you've got this thing, okay, and then there's like a gap when you can't almost even ask any questions because you're just trying to understand those words. And then all the questions come later on. And I did feel that when Annie was told she was on her own and she wasn't told to bring anybody.
But then would that have indicated that there was something wrong before the appointment and then she would have panicked?
I would write on the letters that invite people in, we would like you to come in for an appointment. We would like you to bring a family member. We invite everyone to have a family member in case the news in case you need support during the appointment. And that would say that everyone's invited just in case.
That's fair enough. However, when you get a phone call, for example, when I was diagnosed with MS, I was at work. They rang me up going, you need to come into the surgery right away. We have an appointment this afternoon. Can you get here? So I was like, okay, I can do that. So I left work early, got the bus over because Lawrence had the car because he was working in Sydney that day. So he was essentially 2 hours away in a different city. I turn up to the GP surgery. I sit down. She has got the results of my MRI. So she's got these very pretty pictures of my brain. And she's like, looks like you've got MS. And I was on my own and I was like, oh my God, what now? I think if I remember correctly, I burst into tears because it impacted my residency status in Australia. So we were just about to go through permanent residency and all of the stuff associated with that. And I was basically being told that I couldn't stay in the country.
Yeah. It was going to be a massive life change for you.
Yeah. And it's equally a massive life change for Annie. All of a sudden, she's walking around and she's fit and healthy. And then she's being told that you've got to go through all of this intensive treatment.
Especially as she says, I don't feel sick.
No, I kind of felt sick, but I didn't feel sick.
How sick have you got to feel to be sick?
I don't know. I basically, when I was diagnosed, I couldn't feel anything from the neck down. It was all numb. It was all tingly. Okay, most people are like, oh my goodness, what on earth's going on? There's me just like, yeah, it's all right. Never mind. Because I'd been fobbed off so many times before. I'd had things similar to this where basically part of my arm went numb and dead and they just went, oh, that's a migraine. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They've given me CT scans. They were just like, yeah, no, it's nothing wrong with you. And I think at one point when I first went in Australia, she went, you're worried about MS, aren't you? And I'm like, well, yeah. And she's like, no, it's not that. And it turns out it was.
Yeah. And I think there is this, oh, it's not, don't worry, it's not. I mean, when my mum was diagnosed with cancer, she had a hysterectomy and the surgeon who took out all of her womanly bits turned around and said, right, we're sending the stuff off for testing, but don't worry, none of it looked cancerous.
It turned out it was riddled with
stage
cancer.
3.
Yep.
It was in the lining of all her other organs.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, wasn't it, at the time?
And I imagine, okay, you didn't see it, that's fine. But because she'd been reassured.
But the doctor said that it'd be fine.
Yeah. And then when she gets a phone call and says, right, you need to come into the doctor's tomorrow.
Did she go in with your dad
and me.
Time. Well,
yeah.
that's good. At least you
I think we all
support.
went, actually.
I think that's really good.
But it was kind of those things where she was like, right, this makes me laugh. So the doctor said, I want to see you tomorrow, 9:00. Okay.
Ugh.
Yeah. And my mum went, oh, well, the traffic's really bad then. Can we make it a bit later? Not like panicked that the cancer doctor wants to see you basically at his first appointment tomorrow.
She was like, no, I've got to worry about the traffic, mate.
Yeah. So we went in at like 10:30 or something to go and find out. And yeah, she had stage 3 ovarian cancer. So it is this. You're reassured, you're told it's all right. And then that probably adds, and Annie's the same. She's like, I'm too young for this. This is what I'm being told. I'm too young. It's not going to be me. It's absolutely fine. It's just going to be
And it's the fact that everyone around her is telling her the same thing.
Yeah.
So she is lulled into this false sense of security that it's going to be fine when actually it isn't. And I don't know about you, but at that point I did go, what about her mental health? Because this doctor, I don't know about you, I thought he was quite abrupt.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
She says that.
This is Annie's retelling of the story. She may be not remembering it because it is a big shock. It's something that I probably don't remember.
She was
properly.
given some pink leaflets.
Yeah, here you go. Take the pink leaflets, all right. But also another thing that I want to understand is how it is doctors are trained to give bad news to patients.
Yeah.
Because there has to be training in this. This guy that she sees, she hates him because he is just abrupt, he's rude,
she says...
he tells her to take things seriously. I think at that point I would have punched him in the face.
You're not taking this seriously.
Well, you've just given me some shocking news. I need to process this, dude.
Yeah, and everyone processes things differently. So I don't know some people might laugh at the news because you're thinking, oh my God, this is ridiculous.
Laugh, cry.
Yeah, you don't know what reaction you might have. And actually any reaction is perfectly okay. And he should be reassuring her going, look, I know this is a shock. I know this you're having a reaction. You're in shock. So once this settles down, we'll then talk about the next stage.
Another thing that I wanted to know is the fact that she's given, obviously, the diagnosis, and then he bombards her with all this information. People just don't listen. They can't take it in. It's just too much information all at once. I mean, when I was a dietitian, the amount of times that I would have to speak to people and explain what diabetes actually was, because they'd just come in and be like, oh, it's just mild. I'm like, do you actually understand what diabetes is and that it can get worse? And they were like, no, the doctor just said it was mild. And I'm like, no, this is the issue, is that yes, we can control it with diet to begin with, but it can get worse over time and you need to look after yourself. You can't just continue doing what you were doing before. Yeah. And they're like, but it's mild.
And it's almost like it's become so common that it's,
everyone's got it, so it's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, it is the way she's told. And then they do let her call her mum, and her mum comes. And I thought, oh, okay, so they're going to go back in.
But they don't. That's the other thing. Why didn't they have another consultation and going, this is the situation? Because mum needs to be brought up to speed, because mum then needs to be able to support Annie. And she is the one that's going to be able to take that information in and then be able to help her later when she has questions and she wants to know more. Because, it's just, I don't know, it just annoys me, this particular scenario that she finds herself in, because surely there's a better way than what happened.
And there is an element that they don't know quite what they're going to find until they go in there.
I understand that. However, again, telling her, then letting her process it and getting her back in at a later stage, like a day or so later, just to go through it again, would have probably been very beneficial to her.
I also think, why, for example, with your appointment, when you were rushed into the GPs to be told you have MS,
it didn't really change anything. It's not like they could have done anything the next day.
And it's almost like telling her, we actually could do with appointment to be told, and then, right, now we're going to sit in the waiting room, process, have a nice space that they can talk and with her loved one, and then go back in and have more information given to them. Yeah. And rather than kind of leaflets shoved at you, told you've got this thing.
Read this. If you need any help, ring Macmillan or one of the charities. The cancer charities will sort you out and answer your questions.
Yeah. And her mental health is never mentioned in this.
Not at the very beginning. It does seem that Annie experiences some difficulties later on. However, why isn't that given straight away? Why isn't there any support given to her with her mental health? Because it is a big kick in the teeth. All of a sudden, you've got this diagnosis. And why isn't it you get given the cancer diagnosis? Maybe at that point you go in to see a therapist so you can just sit there, talk, process, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what could happen.
Or an appointment a week later even, just so that you know, once some of the shock is gone. But there is none of that. And actually Macmillan have released a document, which we'll put in the show notes, talking about how there is a problem with this.
I think it's a huge problem because there is no mention at any point about support. So not only should Annie have got support, but when she talks about the worries about her burdening her mum and her friend and her sister and everyone around her that is trying to support her, they also need this kind of mental health support as well.
Yeah.
But yet it's kind of left to the charities.
It is left to the charities. And on the Macmillan, they say that one cancer patient commented that it does feel like that after your last chemo, all of the attention and the doctors and the nurses all disappear. And then suddenly you're at home and you're coping, but then you're not, because it suddenly all sort of dawns on you. And there's nothing there to actually help you with all of this.
Well, prior to that, you're just focused on getting through the treatment because the side effects that Annie talks about are horrific. So she is constantly sick throughout. She is just kind of living hour to hour on most cases, particularly on days when she has gone through chemo. So yeah, of course you're going to find it all of a sudden the shock when you sit there and have time to reflect on what's been going on the last few months for you.
And this is the thing, that even after you've gone through the treatment, they don't suddenly go, right, now you need to look after your mental well-being. This is what you need to do. And even on the NHS website, the only sort of things it talks about is either go see your GP, talk to your friends, spend some time on yourself. And
you don't want to necessarily be a burden. I don't want to necessarily go up to my friends and go, oh, do you mind if I talk about my MS today? Do you mind if I come up and talk to you about this today? Oh, I'm feeling a bit down. There's just sometimes people are going to find that really difficult because they don't want to be a burden on their family because they're also concerned about their own mental health. I mean, let's be honest, Annie's mum probably went through hell and back during this ordeal. And yet there was nothing really there to support her or her daughter.
No. And Macmillan are there, and there are other cancer charities that are there, but it is left to these charities to support people.
And you have to purposely go and get it when maybe at the time you're not thinking straight enough to go, hang on a minute, I know, I need to go and sort something out about my mental well-being.
Yeah. And they do actually, you know, Macmillan say that it is left to the GPs. It's left to you going to your GP and saying, I'm having a problem. And
well, that's what it takes for Annie, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you read the book, there is a part when she basically has a bit of a girl crush on Dr. Dickinson. And I really hope that Dr. Dickinson reads this book because she offers so much support to Annie. And I think it would be nice if she saw or could read how much of an impact she actually had on Annie's life because she was just like, I don't know what I would have done without Dr. Dickinson.
But Annie even worries that she might be bugging her too much and that it might be,
and this is the person
to see her.
That she's meant to be going to try and get the help, which is the irony of you feeling this way.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem, and when she does go to the GPs, she's offered medication.
So she is given sertraline and diazepam.
Yeah. But not offered any talking therapy, which I find really strange because she's going for a really large life-changing illness and no one actually says, do you know what, why don't we sit and talk about it?
No professional who is there to be supportive.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good talking to family, but as I said, you don't want to keep burdening them with, I might die.
Yeah, and I found that when my mum had cancer, she did talk to me because we don't have the necessary mother-daughter relationship. So she felt she could burden onto me. But she didn't feel she could do that to my dad and my sister and stuff like that. And she was telling me things like she was so scared she was going to die and what happens if she dies and what happens if this happens. And when she didn't understand what the doctors were saying, she wanted someone she could talk to that would explain things to her because also doctors speak another language. They speak this medical talk.
And what on earth are stages and all of that kind of stuff.
And you kind of need someone there to kind of explain it all to you and to break it all down and into bits so you can take in a chunk and then you can take in another chunk. And because the bombardment of information is too much as well. So I think the whole diagnosis side of things needs to be looked at. And Macmillan have pointed this out and are trying to get more psychologists in those kind of hospitals where this happens so that they're much more available. And she does say a lot of staff don't know where to refer people apart from Macmillan and the charities that are out there.
And I do want to say that we're not blaming the NHS or the people that work in the NHS, because we're definitely not. It's not their fault that this is happening. It's a case of that underlying issue is probably the lack of money to support what people are needing.
The NHS is putting out fires and
actionary rather than prevention.
Yeah, and mental health isn't considered a priority next to physical health. And although they are meant to be an equivalent, that actually it's not being taken in the same way, even though Macmillan point out that actually having depression while you have cancer actually does affect your survival rates.
Which is sad in itself.
Yeah.
Having that negative frame of mind is going to impact even the ability for you to go through some of the treatments, because you need to get through these treatments and out the other end.
And a lot of people say as well, there is a level of mind over matter with these things. And if you are down because of everything that's going on and your depression is taking you inwardly, you're not going maybe to, I don't know, fight as hard. I don't know.
Well, let's be honest. There is this thing called the placebo effect. If you think you're getting some medication, then you have a decrease in symptoms. Therefore, there's got to be something that out there that shows that if you're positive and you think that you're going to survive and you're going to beat breast cancer, then the outcome is going to be better for you. Yeah. Rather than you going, well, I've got breast cancer, I'm going to die, I might as well just give up now.
Yeah.
Kind of mentality.
Yeah. Still, you can fight as hard as you want, and still that mentality might not save you, but
it's probably better to have the positive rather than a negative outlook.
It definitely seems to raise your chances of survival according to the studies that have been done. So I really think that there should be more help in that way in the centres that do deal with cancer, and
maybe even in a GP surgery generally, or in any kind of clinic situation where bad news like this might be given out to people.
Well, I mean, I was told I had fibromyalgia. The woman almost talked as if she'd won a prize because she'd figured out what was wrong with me.
Ding, 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 ding. You've got fibromyalgia. Yay!
And
don't worry about us trying to figure out how to stop this pain and the fact that you're in chronic pain all the time. Well, I've figured out what it is.
And then I didn't know what it was. It was just a word to me. And she gave me some medication. Well, she said, I'm going to write to your GP and put you on this medication and all of this. And I was like, okay. And that's
so what next?
It. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know that it was forever. And I had to do my own research to figure all that out. And then go and see my GP and go, oh, by the way, can I have the medication they'd like me to have?
Pretty please.
Yeah.
With sugar on top.
Yeah. And it is one of those, actually, whatever diagnosis you're getting, be it diabetes, be it fibromyalgia, MS, cancer, whatever it is, maybe that needs to be that, okay, well, actually, you should go and talk to someone about this. Someone who will actually be able to deal with your sort of understanding of the impact.
Yeah, definitely.
And the thing with cancer as well is because it affects your physical look so much through the hair, but also she has one of her breasts removed and then has reconstruction later on.
And in itself, the reconstruction isn't necessarily the most easiest thing either, is it? Particularly when she ends up with, basically what they've done is they take some fat from the stomach area and they put it to reconstruct the breast. And because they've taken the skin from the same area, because she had the breast completely removed, including the skin, that she ended up with pubic hair growing on her breast, which I think I would be mortified by.
Yeah, and she is. And then she tries to go and get
laser treatment to get rid of the hair. And everyone keeps saying, no, sorry, you've got cancer or had cancer. We're not going to treat you with this.
And I mean, the NHS do provide it, and she finds out that she can get it and they do it. And hopefully it is all fine now and she feels better about it. But with
all of those changes already in your body, and then you've just kind of been slapped around with this new particular
and you think, oh thing. Yeah, my new boob, really nice, it matches, it's bringing your confidence back, and then suddenly it's got hair on it.
Yeah.
So you kind of, it's like a roller coaster of emotions. Like you're in shock, better. It's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. Your hair isn't falling out, then it is falling out, and it's
growing back,
and then it's growing on your boob. So I do think I really felt for Annie as she was going through this. It really felt like a whole roller coaster of emotions. Later on, after she has the reconstruction and everything, she does start to realise her mental health has been affected. And she does see her GP and she gets some medication and things like that to help. And she realises that, it's not just the side effects of the treatment anymore that are making her feel like she doesn't want to get out of bed. It is actually like depression that is coming on.
Yeah. So I think we'll leave it there for this episode. So in the next episode, what I think we might talk about is Annie's quest for love.
Yes.
And about the pressure that is basically in all society to women.
A very feminist episode.
Yeah, I think so. And also the fact that she finds her true love and what is happening at the end of the book. And so we'll go from there, I think. So in the meantime, it's okay not to be okay.
And if you're not okay, talk.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Mental Health Book Club podcast. If you need additional help with your mental health, please contact the Samaritans on 116 123, which is a 24-hour helpline. And if you need additional information about mental health issues, please visit Mind at mind.org.uk. Our next episode will be part 2 of Love and Remission by Annie Belasco. Our next episode with Secret Psychiatrist will be about mental health and physical health. Our next book will be Are We All Lemmings and Snowflakes by Holly Ball. If you'd like to find out more about the MHBC podcast, please visit our website, mentalhealthbookclub.com. We really hope that you enjoy this podcast, and we would like to hear what you think. Please head over to Twitter and follow us at MHBC_podcast, or head over to Facebook and follow our Facebook page, which is Mental Health Book Club. If you would like to show your support further, please share us with your family and friends and leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. You can now support the Mental Health Book Club podcast on Patreon by going to patreon.com/MHBC. For as little as $2 a month, you will be able to get early access to our episodes. You'll be able to get our full episodes. So usually I split them into 30-minute episodes. You can get all of the episode in one go. And you will also be eligible for free prize draws and other giveaways as we go through. If you choose to support us on the silver level or gold level, you will now get a Mental Health Book Club podcast tote bag, which says it's okay not to be okay. And when we meet our target of $200 per month, we will be then giving $50 to Mind, the mental health charity. We would absolutely love to be able to get to this position because we want to be able to give back to the mental health community as much as you guys help us out.